Eddie Knight, Christopher Fairbank, has died in dramatic EastEnders scenes following an intense showdown with George Knight, Colin Salmon, who called him out over his racist behavior. Vile criminal Eddie, as viewers know, was George's adoptive father. He made his debut in the BBC One soap a little over 2 years ago when he rocked up in Walford with wife Gloria. And it didn't take long for his true nature to come to light. Eddie was revealed to be a vile racist who killed a black man decades earlier. And the murder in question was witnessed by George, who was just a child. To make the situation even more devastating, George found out in 2024 later that the man Eddie had murdered, Henry Kofi Asare, was his birth father. The former Queen Vic landlord testified against Eddie in court, as he went on trial for racially motivated murder. Eddie was found guilty and sentenced to prison for his horrific crime, with George wanting nothing more to do with him. But Eddie returned to his life earlier this year when he made contact with George, revealing that he was dying. The twisted villain claimed to have turned over a new leaf and wanted to make amends, but it was soon clear that he was lying in a bid to get a roof over his head for the last few months of his life. He subsequently offered Nicola Mitchell, Laura Doddington, cash in exchange for staying at her place, and with Harry's Barn and Night Fusion in desperate need of funds, the matriarch ultimately agreed. George was none the wiser to Nicola's ulterior motives in suggesting that he make peace with Eddie before he passed away, but the truth was revealed this week. George decided to confront Eddie over his abhorrent behavior towards Gina, Francesca Henry, who struggled with the knowledge that racist Eddie was being looked after by her dad. Gina confronted George and told him how it's making her feel, revealing the disgusting words Eddie had said to Harry Mitchell, Elijah Holloway, previously. In a bid to put his daughter first, George opted to call the prison and have Eddie moved back there to die. But Eddie stopped him in his tracks when he revealed the deal he'd struck with Nicola. Eddie tried to belittle George, claiming he let women walk all over him, branding him weak. He then revealed that he isn't sorry for all the hurt that he's caused, and proceeded to spew more vile racist hate. George was utterly appalled. Eddie started choking after taking his meds and reached for a glass of water. George, however, took the glass in his hand and drank it himself as Eddie watched on in horror, dying in subsequent scenes. Nicola arrived home to face questions from George, who said he didn't want Eddie's money. Later, an ambulance arrived to take Eddie's body out of number 1. Will George share the circumstances that led to Eddie's death? And will he and Nicola be able to work through her lies? Walford is left reeling next week as a devastating family feud reaches its explosive conclusion, ending in tragedy and leaving one major resident fighting overwhelming guilt. Tensions have been simmering for months between the family members, with old secrets, betrayals, and bitter resentments bubbling beneath the surface. But nobody could have predicted just how catastrophic the consequences would become. The drama unfolds when a heated confrontation erupts at the Arches late one evening. What begins as a fierce argument quickly spirals out of control as years of anger finally come pouring out. Voices are raised, accusations fly, and emotions reach breaking point. Witnesses later describe the scene as one of the most shocking incidents Walford has ever seen. The victim, already struggling under the weight of recent personal turmoil, arrives determined to settle matters once and for all. Friends had warned them to stay away, sensing danger ahead, but they refused to back down. Their relative is equally determined to have their say. As the confrontation intensifies, neither side is willing to walk away. Harsh truths are revealed, painful memories are dragged into the open, and the atmosphere becomes increasingly volatile. Then disaster strikes. In a split-second moment that nobody sees coming, the argument turns physical. A shove is exchanged during the chaos, causing the victim to lose their footing. What follows is a horrifying chain of events that leaves everyone frozen in shock. The injured resident crashes heavily to the ground and suffers a severe head injury. For a few terrifying seconds there is complete silence. Panic quickly spreads as bystanders rush to help. Emergency services are called, and desperate attempts are made to keep the victim conscious, while they wait for medical assistance to arrive. The relative responsible is left stunned. What was supposed to be a confrontation has suddenly become a nightmare. As paramedics race the victim to hospital, family members gather anxiously, fearing the worst. News spreads rapidly across Albert Square, and residents struggle to believe what has happened. At the hospital, doctors work tirelessly to save the injured resident. Loved ones keep vigil through the night, clinging to hope as medical staff fight to stabilize their condition. Some refuse to leave the waiting room, while others break down as they contemplate the possibility of losing someone they care about. Back in Walford, guilt begins to consume the relative at the center of the tragedy. Although they never intended for anyone to get hurt, they cannot escape the reality of what happened. Every moment of the confrontation replays endlessly in their mind. Friends attempt to offer support, but nothing can ease the crushing burden they now carry. The following morning brings devastating news. Despite the efforts of doctors, the victim's injuries prove too severe. The resident dies in hospital surrounded by grieving relatives. Shockwaves immediately spread throughout the square. For many residents, it feels impossible to comprehend that someone who was alive only hours earlier is suddenly gone forever. Neighbors gather in stunned silence, struggling to process the heartbreaking loss. As word reaches the relative responsible, they collapse in tears. Overcome by grief and self-blame, they realize their life may never be the same again. What makes the tragedy even more devastating is that the pair had once shared an incredibly close bond. There was a time when they would have done anything for one another. However, years of misunderstandings, betrayals, and unresolved pain slowly drove them apart. Now there will never be an opportunity to make peace. The guilt becomes unbearable. In the days following the death, questions begin to emerge about exactly what happened during the fatal showdown. Police launch an investigation, interviewing witnesses and examining the circumstances surrounding the incident. Some residents believe it was simply a tragic accident. Others argue that emotions had been escalating for too long, and that the outcome was almost inevitable. The relative finds themselves under increasing scrutiny, as rumors spread throughout the community. Everywhere they go, they feel the weight of judgment. Some neighbors offer sympathy, recognizing the terrible accident for what it was. Others struggle to forgive and openly blame them for the death. Caught in the middle are family members who must somehow navigate their own grief, while facing impossible questions about loyalty and responsibility. Funeral preparations soon begin, bringing another wave of heartbreak. As residents gather to remember the life that has been lost, emotional memories resurface. Friends share stories, family members pay tribute, and tears flow freely as Walford says goodbye to one of its own. Yet even during the mourning process, tensions continue to simmer. The relative responsible remains isolated, haunted by the belief that they have destroyed their family forever. When the funeral finally arrives, emotions reach boiling point once again. A powerful eulogy leaves many attendees in tears, while another family member delivers a raw and emotional speech about regret, forgiveness, and the consequences of unresolved conflict. The words hit particularly hard for the grieving relative. Unable to cope with the overwhelming guilt, they make a dramatic confession after the service, admitting they would do anything to turn back time. Their emotional breakdown leaves those gathered stunned. As Walford begins the difficult process of moving forward, one question lingers over Albert Square. Can the family ever recover from such a devastating loss? The death leaves a permanent scar on everyone involved, changing lives forever, and ensuring that the consequences of that fatal showdown will be felt for years to come. One thing is certain: this heartbreaking tragedy will become one of the most talked about moments in EastEnders history, proving once again that in Walford, a single moment can change everything. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to EastEnders Spoilers Official.